Hello and welcome to the MLS Power Rankings show presented by So Rare. It is the final one of the year. It's been a long, beautiful journey with all of you. Week 33 is done and dusted. Just week 34 remaining. It's money time. It's playoff time. There's a bunch of E's next to teams' names. They are eliminated. They're out. They don't have a chance. They're just playing spoiler on decision day. But midweek, there's no spoiler to be played. Everybody is fighting in the Eastern Conference on Wednesday night for something, namely playoff positioning. You got Miami, big match on Wednesday night. Orlando, that's a makeup from the U.S. Open Cup, and Charlotte is hosting the Columbus Crew. We've got a great power ranking show for you today, but we're not doing it in traditional fashion. There's no counting up. There's no counting down. We are strictly focused on the playoff field. Who can get in? Who might get out? What matters on the final week of the season? All right, let's start with Inter Miami. They come in at number 10 in these power rankings after week 33. It doesn't matter, though, Chris Wittyngham, where you are in the power rankings. I'm loath to say that, given this is the power rankings show. It just matters if you're in the playoff field. And right now, Miami's in it. And if they win against Orlando, they will be into the playoffs. It would be a hell of an accomplishment.
Massive accomplishment. And you feel pretty comfortable about it because they'll be at home, where outside of that first month of the season when Miami got off to a start where they had 1 point from 5 games, they've been sensational at home. No matter who's come to Dry Pink Stadium, they've managed to pull out the result that they've needed, particularly at the most vital time. I would say after a 2-hour lightning delay against Columbus was the most pivotal time to get a win, and they got it then. Gonzalo Higuain is on form. There are a couple concerns heading into the Wednesday night game, namely that Gregory is suspended after picking up his 12th yellow card of the year, and Alejandro Pozuelo is a major injury doubt as well. And those are massive concerns for Miami. It seems as though whenever they've had these difficult circumstances, though, the sort of force of being at home and the overall spirit in the team has managed to overcome. I would call it Matthew Doyle's ex-dog has risen to the occasion. And I feel like Miami should just about have enough to get over the line on Wednesday night.
They got that dog in him, is what you're saying for this game. They'll need it if they don't have Pozuelo. They're 7-3-2 with him in the lineup since he arrived. Take us through what the injury is and take us through what they'll be missing if he's not on the field in this game.
There wasn't a ton of detail about the injury. I would just sort of refer to whatever Phil said. He did say that he pushed through a lot in order to play Friday night in Toronto. And you could actually tell a little bit, sort of in retrospect, okay, like there was something going on there because he wasn't at his sharpest really for the first 55 minutes of the game. And then he got into good positions. He was creating chances and looked like Pozuelo again. But in terms of what they're missing, it's absolutely enormous. I do think that they started to figure out something of a formula before he arrived, but life just got so much easier when he got here because chance creation has been a difficulty for Inter Miami for 2.5 years before Alejandro Pozuelo got here. So I think the fact that aspect of the game completely simplified, it simplified life for Gonzalo Higuain. It's absolutely remarkable how different he has been since Pozuelo's arrival. And it just sort of made the whole team make sense. And they played in a variety of ways. They were playing mostly out of a 4-2-3-1 with Pozuelo as the 10. It kind of became a 4-4-2 in defense. And then recently, to integrate Leonardo Campana back into the team, they play out of a 4-4-2 diamond, and Pozuelo is sort of at the center of all of it. I'll be curious if they stick with that formation and shift Bryce Dukin towards that number 10 position, but then who fills out the other central midfield positions? Do you go back to playing with wingers again and reintroduce Robert Taylor and Ari Lassiter into the team? There are a lot of questions that have to get answered if he can't give it a go on Wednesday night.
Yeah, Witty, that was actually going to be my follow-up question for like, and Witty just took us through it. If you haven't been watching a lot of Miami, they had been primarily a 4-2-3-1 team since Pozuelo got there, and a lot of what they were doing was getting those wingers behind the opposing fullbacks or pullbacks to Higuain, to Campana when he's been in there. But the 4-4-2 diamond, it has been good for them, I think, especially defensively. But it was not, they did not create penetration. They did not create chances against Toronto until they went to that 4-2-3-1. Given the absence of Pozuelo for this game, potential absence, I guess, of Pozuelo for this game, it seems like you would want to go back to the 4-4-2 though, because there's no way that they're going to put the ball in the back of the net unless they have their two primary goal scorers out there.
The only reason why I would doubt going back to that shape is I do think that Pozuelo is what makes the two-striker system work. They have tried it at varying points throughout the year. When Higuain got hurt earlier in the year, Campana was sort of the solo striker. Then just around the time that Higuain was getting back to full fitness, then Campana got hurt. And the only way that they've coexisted as two strikers is with Pozuelo behind them. And that's a big job to ask of Bryce Duke to sort of be the orchestrator and keep both of those guys happy and provide both of them with chances. I agree with you. I think at times in these last couple of games, it's the desire to get what for me are their four best attackers in Duke, Pozuelo, Campana, and Higuain on the field at the same time. And I actually thought in Toronto, they did a better job in possession in terms of keeping the ball and keeping things flowing. But you're right. In those vital moments, for whatever reason, that chance creation was a little bit of a struggle. I think you'd probably, playing out of such a narrow shape, want a little bit more out of your fullbacks. Chris McVeigh is a converted center back who's playing at left back. And he's done a decent job going forward, but is not quite the overlapping type. And DeAndre Yedlin, to give him credit, did provide the assist for the winner against DC. But I think that the chance creation hasn't been entirely there out of the diamond shape. I think there's some really interesting tactical ways that they can go about integrating their attackers, but that all is dependent on the defensive side of things. And you mentioned that no Gregory is a huge absence. And so how do you put Victor Ulloa in there? We've seen even at times Chris McVeigh move from left back into central midfield, albeit in desperation moments. Do you bring Victor Ulloa back in the team, even though he hasn't started too many games this season? There's a lot of questions to answer, and I'm really interested to see what the lineup looks like.
One question we don't have anymore is, will Gonzalo Higuain be wearing pink in 2023? He will not. He has retired, or not yet. He will retire. This is the last hurrah. Boy, if you need a guy to create out of nothing, to score a goal where you didn't see one previously, if you needed the most on-form striker in the league to help deliver you to the playoffs, Gonzalo Higuain, I think, would be that pick right now. What do you make of his retirement? What do you make of his comments that he fell back in love with the game in Miami, which I don't think, like, I would have believed he was retiring. I wouldn't have believed he said that at the beginning of this season. Like, it is an incredible story arc for Gonzalo Higuain, and what a perfect way to end it or to continue it would be to score on Wednesday night and clinch a playoff berth.
I think there are a lot of things that happened off the field for him that made him fall in love with the game again. Bringing his family over, has a young child as well. His brother Federico was at the club when he arrived. I'm at the facility right now. I just saw him walk by. That I imagine being around family, or specifically your brother, for the first time in a while must have been incredibly cool for him. And then I do think that the on-field has a massive amount to do with the off-field, because as I mentioned, he developed that relationship with Pozuelo, and all of a sudden he doesn't have to work to both create and then score the chances. He can just worry about scoring the chances. And I think this whole thing about how he changed number from 9 to 10 was because he sort of recognized that there wasn't that creator within the club, particularly from the start of the season. But then you bring in a player like Pozuelo, and it sort of makes sense again. You can just worry about scoring goals. And I think as well, it's the variety of goals. One comes from a free kick, from impossible angles in the penalty area as well. He scored every kind of possible goal you'd ever want. And so I think the fact that he is performing this well he sort of had already decided to retire. He said at his press conference, he decided about 3 or 4 months ago. He's like, all right, I'm going to go out with my last hurrah. I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to integrate myself into this team. And now I am sort of disappointed that he's not coming back for next season, because it was brilliant to watch. He was sensational. And hopefully there's 1 or 2 more goals for him to get this team into the playoffs. And then when you have that one player on form like that, you can't even imagine how it would feel like to enter a playoff game with him as opposition. And he's the threat, right? Like you would not want to come up against a player like Gonzalo Higuain in that sort of form. That is what kills teams in the playoffs. So if they can get in, I would give Miami a decent chance purely on the basis of how well he's performing.
We gave Phil Neville and Chris Henderson, for that matter, a ton of praise on Monday's Extra Time, our awards show, bringing both up for Coach of the Year as well as Executive of the Year. But you mentioned Gonzalo being gone. Rodolfo Pizarro is not going to come back. Maybe Pozuelo will be back, but his contract is up. Before I let you go, Witty, I got to ask you about this DP situation. There is probably not another club in this league that when you see an open DP spot, you start to wonder, and a certain name starts to come up. What do you think might happen with these DP spots in the offseason? We'll talk playoffs when they get in, all right?
Yeah, so I think with these open DP spots, Look, first off, it's really cool that they're on take two with the DPs. They get a second crack at it while they've been able to engineer a playoff appearance this season. And I think the core is established. I think we saw that with LAFC this year. They established their core before they brought in some bigger name players, even though they struggled to integrate. They at the very least had the basis of a team. And that for me is very much the takeaway of 2022. It's first off, I'm glad that we're back into Twitter rumor season because following the at Inter Miami CF tweet deck column from reports all over the world is always a joy. And really, anything is a possibility because people want to come here, people want to play here, and it will be really fascinating to see how they find the balance of wanting to maintain flexibility for the summer. If and when Leo Messi wants to move here,
Oh, he said it. Now we can put it. Now we can put it in the title. Now we can put it in the title.
I didn't say it. I never said
it.
the name. I did never say the
it.
name. Did I lead you? Did I not lead you? Nobody will listen to that part of this. Okay, they'll just hear the messy part.
The corporate media taking me out of context. So yeah, I mean, look, you probably want to maintain some flexibility in the event, but look, I think Inter Miami can use a DP wide player, no question. You'd want to at least maintain a presence similar to Pozuelos as a number 10. And I don't know, you're probably going to bring in Leonardo Campana as a signing in the off season. You exercise that buy option from Wolves. Maybe striker isn't as big of a priority if he's your leading striker. You have some flexibility there to maybe add another wide player, another central midfield player. But I am fascinated at Chris Henderson getting the opportunity to use these three DPs. I think he's done an incredible job of building out a core. Obviously has enormous pedigree with Seattle and bringing in the appropriate DPs for Major League Soccer. And I'm really fascinated to see how this team swings for the fences here because we know that that's what this club is meant to do. They're going to be moving into a new stadium in a couple of years' time, and they will want to have star players performing at a top level by the time that stadium comes around.
All right, Miami have an opportunity tomorrow, Wednesday night, October 5th, 8 p.m. Eastern, hosting Orlando at Drive Pink Stadium. If they win, thanks to all the action around them in the schedule and decision day, they will be in the playoffs, currently above the line. We'll see if they can do it. MLS Live on ESPN+. Chris Wittyngham joined us here. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your time, man.
Is it crazy to think that maybe there's a home playoff game still maybe on the cards?
It's not crazy.
It's not at all.
No.
Like it could happen.
If they win out and the Red Bulls lose or draw on decision day, then Miami would be fourth. Fourth.
Well, we'll worry about that after Wednesday night. How about that? Thank you so much, Woody.
I'm probably getting ahead of myself. Thanks.
Yeah, appreciate your time, man. Let's talk Orlando City at number 12 before we get to Charlotte and Columbus. We've got Alex Stec coming up on FC Cincinnati as well. Orlando City at 12 did not move in this. They lost NYCFC 2-1 in week 33. Doyle, 1 win, 3 losses in their last 4 games. They'd had a little bit of a spurt there, sort of around U.S. Open Cup as well. Petered out a little bit.
It has.
What do you think? Here's their scenario. Let me just give you, they have to win at Miami and Columbus has to lose at Charlotte. If that happens, then they're in.
Right. And that is very possible. The other thing that is very possible is that they keep on this downward trajectory that we've seen for the past few weeks. I think there's a couple of things at play. One is that the schedule's gotten a little bit harder. I mean, the losses, at Philly and at NYCFC, 2 of those losses are ones that if you're looking ahead and you see it on the schedule, you're like, yeah, we're probably coming out of that game with no points. So that's 1. 2 is, I think, just a little bit of a hangover from the Open Cup. And 3 is that injuries have caught up with this team. Robin Janssen in particular is a huge loss for them. Like, he does so much work with progressing the ball from the back into good spots where guys like Mauricio Pereira, Junior Urso, Facundo Torres can go to work and rip teams apart. And without him, they just don't have that sort of class from central defense. So that's 1. And 2 is that NYCFC is a terrible matchup for them. The thing with NYCFC, and honestly, Atlanta is also a bad matchup for them, and that's the other loss. Because if you have a ball-playing defensive midfielder who can sort of evade the first line of pressure and cut defenders out with progressive passes, you're going to be able to get into the heart of that Orlando City midfield, and you're going to be able to pull them apart. And that's what we saw on the 2 NYCFC goals. The thing that Oscar Pereira did Wiebe, is he switched Mauricio Pereira to the number 8, and he pushed Junior Ursa, who's supposed to be the number 8, up to the number 10. And the idea was that Ursa would get pressure to the ball earlier in opposing teams' buildups. And that worked. But then once NYCFC brought Keaton Parks on, Parks is so good and so classy in those moments. He just kept slicing right through Orlando, the first line of Orlando City's pressure, getting into that midfield, making Pereira and Cesar Araujo, making them do the work, and they couldn't quite do it. Now, this, in the context of this game tomorrow night against Inter Miami, Gregory's a guy who does a lot of that for Inter Miami. Like, the loss of Gregory for Inter Miami isn't just the defensive presence he brings, but it's the distribution. It's the getting the ball upfield to guys in good spots so that they could do the work. So as bad as it has looked in terms of the results the last 4 weeks for Orlando City, man, they kind of got a gift with that 12th yellow card for Gregory, and obviously Pozuelo being less than 100% as well. Things have lined up pretty well for them to come out of this game with 3 points.
And look, on the other side, they've got Columbus at home, so they'll control their destiny. Will Orlando City? And I think Oscar Preja would respond to that, like, hey, we got a little fortunate on that one. He said, well, we've got unfortunate on a lot of other things as it pertains to injuries this year with crucial players. They got the Open Cup. They got the CCL spot that comes with it. Can they get into the playoffs? That's the big question for Orlando City. Going to Miami, an all-Florida battle with the playoffs on the line on Wednesday night. Let's keep it rolling. Another game on Wednesday. This one in the Queen City. Charlotte FC hosting Columbus Crew. Charlotte have to win. If they lose or draw, they are eliminated from 2022 MLS Cup playoffs contention. And they're only here because of a massive result against a team that was fighting for the Supporters' Shield. Philly comes in the midst of a storm and some issues in Charlotte and gets shellacked. Daniel Rios, 4 goals. Sort of absurd when you say it out loud, Doyle. Yeah. But this team has shown steady improvement under Christian Latanzio. It feels like he's going to get this job long-term, playoffs or not.
Yeah, I think did they make it official last week? I thought I had seen some reporting that made it official.
Maybe not. I don't know. But I pride myself on being up to date. So if I'm wrong about that, I'm going to be
I saw some speculation and took the headline as given. But like, he should get the job. He's done a really good job with this team. Tactically, like he matched up. He had this team matched up perfectly for this Union side, like playing a 4-2-3-1 with high wingers to exploit the space that the Union fullbacks leaving behind. I mean, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing literally that lead to the first goal. So that's one box checked. The other box that he's checked, and like there's no better time to talk about it than this week, is getting guys sort of off the scrap heap, guys who were maybe overlooked or underutilized or not developed by other MLS teams, and turning them into good MLS players. Daniel Rios is, the underlying numbers have said for years that Daniel Rios is destined to be a pretty good MLS player, a Brian White type of guy. He's not going to score 4 goals every week, but he scores the types of goals that he did against the Union, being in the right place in the right time. But even more impressive is what's happened with Brant Bronico and Derek Jones. I mean, Brant Bronico, first half of the year, well, first of all, nobody had him written in as a starter. But then he was irreplaceable for them the first half of the year. Just able to win the ball and do like basic D-mid stuff. But over the past 2 months, Latanzio has turned Derek Jones, former US U20 national team guy. He was Tyler Adams' partner on that great 2017 US U20 team. He's turned Derek Jones into the D-mid and allowed Bronico to play this almost Alejandro Bedoya-esque sort of all action, open the field, win the ball, progress the ball, number 8. So if you're a good tactical coach, right, on one hand, and you're a good developmental coach on the other hand, you deserve to have a job. And I would be shocked if Charlotte don't make this official. If they don't, someone else in MLS should think about hiring Christian Latanzio. That's how impressive he's been for this team this year. And the other point I need to make is that, part of this is Swiderski's flexibility. He came in as a DP number 9. He's playing now and has been for the past month as a number 10. And when you have a leader who's able to do that, and I think Swiderski is pretty clearly the leader for this team, it opens up some pathways to playing good ball. And that's what Charlotte did. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs.
Same.
But the fact that they're here and that they've done it with this sort of ragtag, half assembled on the fly and a disassembled roster is really, really impressive. And I'm happy for those fans that they got to see this team fight right up to the very last week of the year.
And they'll do it again on Wednesday night in Charlotte. They've been very, very good at home. That's not good news for the Crew. We'll talk to Jordan Angeli about that in just a second. One other name I want to point out, if you're watching Charlotte, haven't watched Charlotte, need something to think about or look forward the rest of this season, but certainly into seasons in the future. Adilson Milanda, like a 20-year-old center back out of Ligue 2, he has been a great signing for them. There have not been a ton of truly standout center back signings that jumped right into teams at that age. He has done it so far, so he is one to watch for the future. I think he'll be a 22 under 22 guy if he's eligible next year. Let's talk Crew. Jordan Angeli is here.
Hey, guys.
Hey, what's up? How you feeling? It's a lot better feeling when you win late rather than lose late, right? That was a nice gift.
Yeah, I looked in the mirror, had a couple more gray hairs after that one. Yes, it was a big moment for the team, really, and a big moment for Derek Etienne because it came on the heels of a pretty poor miss. And throughout the year, we hadn't seen Derek Etienne follow up like a pretty poor miss or a goal that was eventually called offside with a really great performance. And to do that within minutes of each other just was a huge growth opportunity for Derek, I think, and maybe just flipped the script for this Crew team when it came to, okay, we can, one, close out games, and we can, two, come from behind and gain a lead. I think it was could be a monumental win that they had over the weekend.
I mean, it better be, right? You have those kinds of vibes. You can't just toss that in the bin by not showing up the next game. But that said, that's been kind of the Crew's MO, right? They have trouble finding the ignition, or at least finding the stick shift to get out of second gear. And we even saw some of that in this one. Like, why? Because Jordan, we could all see it when they play with pace, when they play with aggression, when they play on the front foot. They're one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the league, but we don't see that for more than 15 minutes a game.
Yeah, I loved reading your piece, Doyle, about that because I unfortunately have been a little bit of a broken record with the pace of play throughout the entirety of the year and just calling on it. It doesn't. I mean, everything's there. The movement's there. It's just sometimes the pass is too slow or it's not progressing quick enough forward. And I do think that there has to be this give and take. You know, I'm not comparing them to Barcelona, but if you think about Barcelona, those teams of the past, like when they were really in their prime, they had this pace that was slow. And then when they decided to go, it was a completely different pace. And I feel like the Crew want to be a possession team. They want to keep it and kind of lull the other team. But when they decide to go, it has to be upped a level. And when they do up it a level, they do what they did on Saturday. And it is very hard for other teams to be able to hold them back and to prevent them from scoring goals. And this is why we're calling on that. So I think part of it is when you have a player like Darlington Nagbe who is so good on the ball, I do think it sometimes gets slowed down because with him and with Lucas Celerayán, Lucas can take a couple too many touches on the ball or Darlington can slow the pace down, which I'm not saying is bad, but I am saying that there are times to do that and there are times to go and be aggressive and change the pace. And when they decide to do that, they are hard to handle. So
this is a weird game on Wednesday night, Jordan. Mm-hmm. It's like a bizarro world game. I had forgotten how weird this whole thing is going to be. It's not like, okay, you're going to look up at this. The clock starts at 16. You have limited rosters, and then there's injuries, and then there's transfers that play into this because it was a weather abandonment, essentially. Help the people understand how weird this is. I don't know that I've ever seen this actually happen.
Yeah, I haven't. and I didn't know if you guys had, because you've been doing this a lot longer than I have for the league. Okay, so it's starting in the 16th minute. The players that were on the field at that time have to be the same players. I don't know if it's like, have you guys ever watched lacrosse and they do like a drop ball and you have to be like ready in position in the exact position you're in? I don't think it's quite to that effect where like they're going to key everybody into the same places. But the benches are the same. The one exception, which I think there's going to be, and all these things come into play, is the one substitution onto the bench that you can bring as if a goalkeeper is hurt. And that plays into effect for Charlotte. They didn't play. They played their third goalkeeper in this game. So he'll potentially still start. Cisniega will be maybe subbed in onto the bench. Like, that's wild to start with. Carajo is injured. McCoon was transferred. Their bench doesn't really have center backs, the ability to bring in two different center backs. You spoke about the transfer that they brought in. I can't think of his name right now. What's a center back that's been...
Malanda.
Malanda, yes, who's been great. Well, he wasn't signed before this game happened, so he cannot be... Well, he wasn't on the bench even, so he can't be added onto the bench. The only reason they could bring more players onto the bench is if they have, I think, less than 5 subs, which it doesn't look like they're going to have. Like, wild scenes here in Charlotte. And not even to mention, you guys, that this game and the other midweek game both have gigantic playoff implications on 2 rescheduled games. Like, who would have thought that this is really, like, it feels like MLS was like planning for this the whole time, and it really came out to be the best scenario.
It made for some must-watch Wednesday night action at the very least.
It's crazy. And then the Western Conference, all those teams matching up, win and you're in basically at the bottom too. I mean, it certainly feels like fate. What's the situation? And we all saw the suspension for Cucho Hernandez. What's the Cucho situation here? Is this the game that he's missing, or is it decision day?
He missed the game. He missed the game over.
He missed the weekend.
Yeah.
The weekend.
Yes.
Weekend, yeah.
So he missed the game over the weekend, which was also scenes like he jumped into somebody's arms in the box watching Derek Etienne score the final goal. Yeah, I mean, we all know the situation, and it could have been prevented, and it should have been prevented. But he's available. He comes back into the team. He was a player that was on the field when the game was suspended, so therefore he could start. Unless Caleb makes subs, like, he's going to start the game, and that's the question: does Latanzio make subs, you guys? Because of the way that Charlotte has playing, they don't have Rios on the field. They don't have Jones on the field. That's a huge question for me, because if they make subs
weird, man.
Weird. If they make subs before the game starts, it counts towards their 5 subs, but it does not count as a substitution window. So they would still have 3 subs and 3 substitution windows going forward. I mean, I hope everybody wrote that down, because it's a lot of things to remember.
I am as confused as anybody else. What do you think? Are they getting in, Jordan, the crew? And we'll leave you with that.
I said to my colleagues with the crew, Bally Sports, and Chris Doran, who's our radio play-by-play, before the game over the weekend, I said, if the crew win this game, they will win the rest of their games. So I'm sticking with it. Right. They're going to win out. And
Was getting a little nervous there at the end on that prediction, huh? Like, right, 87th, 85th minute, you're like,
Of course I was nervous, but they pulled through.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Dabga, Derek Etienne, with a little bit of magic against his former team. Crew in action midweek, as Jordan helpfully described, and I'm still confused. It is a Bizarro World game against Charlotte in Charlotte. You can watch that one 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan.
Always good to chat. Okay, let's talk to Alex Stec. FC Cincinnati also in the mix. Who's not in the mix in the Eastern Conference? And they're in the mix for the playoffs, Alex, and that is just got to be music to your ears. I believe, let's see, I'm trying to look at the standings here. I believe if they win.
Yeah, if they win, they're
DC, in. Yeah, they're in. So they got to win in DC against the Spoon team.
That's what I've heard. That's the understanding right now is win and in. I didn't want to say that was the matter of fact if we haven't actually seen it on paper, because I know there's hundreds of scenarios floating around right now. And I think everyone was hoping to clinch a playoff spot on Saturday in front of the home fans. Wouldn't have really happened that night because Columbus came back and kind of spoiled the party, beating New York coming from behind. But we did have a little favor from New York City on Sunday, getting the win over Orlando. I don't think I've been more excited to see City win. So hopefully Cincinnati can get it done on Sunday in DC. But yeah, just got to watch for those sneaky teams at the bottom who have nothing to lose and can kind of play freely.
A little disappointment, obviously, with the Fire in town. That's a game you guys would have wanted to win, as you said. Might not have clinched, but would have basically got you there. What's the vibe level here within the team? Is it nervous? Is it confident?
So the guys have been off. They were off yesterday and today, so it's tougher to assess. But I will say, after the game on Saturday, a lot of guys kind of hung around the locker room, didn't just shower and quickly leave. There was a lot of disappointment. I think some disbelief. When you look back at the game, and that's something I even asked Pat Noonan about, our head coach, before the game, was it seems pretty calm around the facility. Do guys seem relaxed? They feel confident. They were on an 11-game unbeaten streak. And he said, yeah, they're confident, but also they should have a bit of nerves because they should feel some pressure. This club really still has not accomplished anything when you look at, they haven't experienced a success by clinching a playoff spot. They've never made it to the playoffs. So knowing that this group should be the first, should be that motivation. And I think this group has found ways to respond all throughout the year. That's something where they've really been successful and kind of learned that as the year has gone on. Even when they're not playing their best soccer, they've found ways to kind of grind it out, get results. So I think they do perform well when their backs are against the wall. But it's just, it's tough to say in DC because you hope the nerves aren't there and that they don't affect the game like they did on Saturday. That was a game where you wanted them to score early, to play with the lead, to be able to not let Chicago's hopes kind of rise or capitalize on any turnovers. And I think they wanted to win the game. Assistant coach Dominic Kinnear put it like, the guys they look like they want to win the whole thing. They're so anxious and they want to do it now. They're trying to do it all in 2 minutes. And just the way that they weren't connecting simple passes, it wasn't what we're used to seeing with this team. So hoping that they're a little more relaxed and just motivated for the game on Monday. And
yeah, I would say you put the gentle version of it out there. I would say they came out of the second half playing like they'd lost their damn minds. The decisions they were making in attack, just sort of like blindly throwing numbers forward as if they were chasing a result in the final 10 minutes of a must-win game. That gifted all 3 goals to the Fire, and it was unnecessary. Pat talked about that after the game. He talked about how that was kind of uncharacteristic from his team.
Yeah, I think that's been a weaker point for the team, is just the decision making in the final third at times, because our front 3 they're so dangerous and they can unlock a defense that can cause chaos. You look at, Brandon Vasquez, 17 goals, Brenner, 15 goals, Lucho Acosta, 9 goals, 18 assists. It's unbelievable the numbers that these guys are putting up. But at times when I think we play a little frantic and don't make the best decisions in the final third, then it causes turnovers and puts more pressure on the defense. And if the guys aren't in a good setup or a good structure, then you do get exposed in the space in behind like they did against Chicago. So when they're firing on all cylinders and they're finding the back of the net, the 2 goals that the guys scored on Saturday were both phenomenal goals, but they waited too long to get there. And yeah, you saw them come out and it was kind of like they forgot what the game plan was or weren't confident in the passes that they were making. So if the passes are there and the guys are clicking, then it's really fun to watch.
So it's win and you're in at DC. Little bit of poetry to have the Spoon team host Cincinnati after 3 years. But things have changed, Alex. Things have changed, and you've been there for all of it. Tell me what you've seen this year, whether it be in the players, the coaching staff, the front office, the supporters. What has changed in Cincinnati from your point of view?
I think the biggest change is culture. And we noticed that from day one. Today is actually Chris Albright's 1-year anniversary since he got hired at FCC. So that's pretty cool. But bringing in this coaching staff, Pat Noonan, Dom Kinnear, Kenny Arena, Paul Rogers, and Ricky Paez, all these guys, but it's led by Pat and Chris, where there's just, I keep hearing Pat say the word authentic and people describe him as being authentic, but he also sees himself that way. And I think that is so accurate because he tells you how it is. He doesn't add any fluff. He doesn't try and make things cute. He's just realistic in what he's saying. He's honest with his players. And I think he has those conversations and his players appreciate that. But he also has found a way to instill belief. You look at the roster now versus the roster last year, it's not that different. Sure, you've had some key pieces that have been game changers for us. Matt Miazga, Obi Wobodo, Junior Moreno's been fantastic. There's a lot of additions that have been made that have really helped this team. But it's also just this sense of belief where you see guys coming off the bench and they're not hanging their heads because they're not starting. They're playing their role in the game. They're coming in to step up and do the job that's being asked of them. Everyone is out there to play for the team. And I think that mentality has just been such a drastic shift from what it was in the past. And there's a full roster of guys that believe in this and think that they will get a chance to play. And when they do, they're hungry to perform. So the level overall just goes up across the entire team.
Who's the non-obvious choice to be player of the match against DC? Who's the guy that has to have a big game that people don't think about?
Wiebe, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I think you're muted, Weeby.
Oh my gosh. Who's the guy? Who's the not obvious guy? I unplugged my my cord. That happens. Who's the non-obvious player of the match against DC? Not Vasquez, not Lucho, not Brenner. Who's the guy that could make it happen that nobody's thinking about right now?
Well, I mean, I think Matt Miazga, maybe he'll score on a set piece. He's done it a couple of times this year.
Maybe Celentano. Celentano stands on his head.
Roman's been unreal, especially the last several games. Last Saturday was a tough one for him, but the games before that, I mean, he went through a stretch where he was standing on his head. I mean, he had in New York City, he kept us in the game. I think there were, I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but he had something like 22 saves on 25 shots or something across 4 games. So he's really stepped into the role, and he's always been a great shot stopper, but seeing him play with more confidence, having that confidence to play balls out of the back that maybe he wouldn't have done earlier in the year, and being more commanding of the back line, I think he's gotten that much more comfortable. And at just 22 years old, you're seeing him be a huge influence on this team. So yeah, I think that's a good shout. Roman could definitely have a big performance for them.
I'm not going to put you on the spot, Alex. I'm not going to say, are they in or they out? Let's just hope that FCC gets in for pure entertainment factor for us neutrals and as a reward for 3 tough seasons for everybody there in Cincinnati. Good luck. Good luck in DC. All right.
I love it. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Cincinnati ends our time with the Eastern Conference. Let's head out west. The scenarios there are pretty simple along the playoff line. Basically, for those bottom 4 teams that are still alive, it's win and you're in because they all play each other. Minnesota hosts Vancouver. If Minnesota wins, they're in. If Vancouver wins, they're in. RSL hosts Portland. Same deal there. RSL win, they're in. Portland win, they're in. It gets a little more complicated with draws and such. We got Jeff Rueter here. He was the original MLS Power Ranking Show guest. And he is back again to talk about these mighty, fading, all maybe choking Loons. Jeff, unmute yourself and join us.
Nice. Finally. Yes, the unmute yourself. That's sage advice for me that no one else would ever need to heed. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I wasn't speaking to myself by giving you any sort of direction there. What is the state of things in Loonsland? I mean, it's not been a pretty run here of late.
No, it is not. It's unfortunately been just like an absolute, I don't know, parabola. My parents are math teachers. Am I using that right? Where, it's going up and things were on the ascendancy. They started off in a pretty dark place too, got better, torrid summer, one of the hottest teams in the summer. And then Bakaye Dabasi got hurt. And I think that you can assess this in a few different ways. You can look at other attackers getting neutralized better. You can look at midfielders struggling with yellow cards and a little bit more rotation in the center of the park than you usually.
Jeff, what you're saying is that Bakaye Dabasi is the MVP of MLS this year.
Not of MLS, but of the Loons. I don't think it's. I don't think it's a coincidence whatsoever because there are a couple of different things that he was doing. One, he was a left-footed center back who liked to defend, so that's already something different than the other left-foot center back that Minnesota had from 2017 to 2019. Second, he likes to run well. He defends. And so he was able to cover ground, and Michael Boxall is still sharp with his positioning. Certainly one of the stronger center backs in MLS, but he's lost a step over the last couple of years. And so as a result, Dibassy was necessary to be able to do some of that quicker coverage and be able to keep up with more of the fleet-footed opponents. And when you lose that player, you've got another sort of strength-first mobility, much further down the pecking order of skill center back coming in with Brent Coleman, who, again, can match up with a center forward pretty well. But if you've got some more athletic teams or some more nimble forwards against him, he's going to struggle as well. And so that's your center back pairing. On the left, Kamar Lawrence is having to stay back a little bit more. So the shape is a little bit different than it was in the middle of the summer. It's just that there have been a lot of knock-on effects. And I think as a result, you're seeing a Minnesota team that's really struggling to get the points that they so desperately needed, that frankly looked like they would be a given if we were talking in let's say the first week of September.
How do they fix it? If the personnel is that much of a mismatch for how they want to play, I guess how they need to play, is there a solution on the roster?
No, and unfortunately, I think you'd probably argue it's too late for them really to find much of a alternative. We've talked about it for years, right, Doyle? Where this isn't a team that likes to play with three center backs on the field at the same time. This isn't a coach who likes three center backs and taking away an extra attacker. And so, I think at this point, either you can go with a young, untested player like Cal Montgomery or Naby Kibunguchi, who have not gotten much looks outside of the MLS2 team, the MLS Next Pro team. At this point, it kind of is what it is. Either Minnesota United's going to be able to outlast the Vancouver Whitecaps, they'll make it to the postseason, and they'll have they'll have an injury that they can point to say this is why things went south so quick. Or they'll be on the outside of the playoffs. Vancouver might steal a place from out their noses, or another team will. And that season finale at Allianz Field is going to have a very different chorus at the end of it than Wonderwall if they end up missing the playoffs on the final day.
What are you making for lunch there? It sounds like a crispy baguette of some sort.
The fun part, I am actively sauteing something right now. I didn't know the show was today when you asked, and I didn't get a link. So I learned I was going to be on after I already started these chickpeas in the saute. So, yeah.
What a delightful little lunch for you, by the way.
Yeah, it's time to start a food blog. Do we know what Robin Lod's status is for this game? Because I'll make the point that obviously Dibassy is the biggest loss, but this team, when Lod was playing as a number 8 this summer, they were moving the ball as well as I think I've ever seen Minnesota United move the ball through midfield. And Babella was getting on the ball in different spots. He was more of a box threat than I think he's ever had to be in his career, maybe.
Probably. Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think at various points of the year, you could say Robin Lod has been the team's best defensive midfielder, number 8, and winger and center forward, all in the same season. And right now, looking, Andy Greeter, the Pioneer Press, he's still on the beat doing it day to day. And today, earlier, I saw that he had tweeted that Robin Lod is training, but on the side. And I think Michael Boxall had a quote about how essential his leadership, Lod's leadership, would be as well.
Michael Boxall volunteered to go to Robin Lod's house and massage his calves, if I read the quote right. He wasn't just like, hey, he's really important. He's like, I will literally go to this man's house and massage him. I don't know if that will help, but I would do it.
That's love, man. That's love. I mean, and it helps too, because they have kids of a similar age, so they can, kind of entertain each other while dads are doing the massage thing. That's just good parenting, more than it is anything else. So his status is questionable. The team still hasn't given like a, probable, doubtful, questionable assessment. They haven't given an out assessment either, which is definitely something to be keeping in mind. But again, then they're going back to questions where I agree with you. I think in the final third that he gives Babello someone to play off of that no one else is quite offering in terms of that scoring threat, while also having that verticality. But they might need him in the midfield. They might need him to do a job because Kervin Arriaga picked up a yellow card in the last game, and so he's going to be suspended on accumulation.
Incredible.
So
incredible.
Yeah, It's this. We go back to the personnel here. There are just so many problems going into this final day, but they are still, albeit lightly, in control of, I think, 7th, right? You tell me if that math is wrong, but I think the only position that they really do have control over if they win would be getting just that squeaker into 7th place.
Right. But they also have a little bit more wiggle room because if they draw, they're in.
That's right. Yeah, there's a couple of matchups that are very, very favorable where it's kind of a 6-pointer. But still, like,
Right.
you know, this is, you think back to 2020, right? You think back to their end of the year, and yeah, they got kind of pipped at the finish line by the Seattle Sounders for that place in MLS Cup. And ever since then, like, you know, this Minnesota team at times has looked like one of the best teams in the Western Conference. And at other teams, they've really struggled to rebound from that and to find that form, to be a consistent team, to be a fun scoring team. They still again, haven't replaced Kevin Molino in terms of that sort of secondary outlet playing from the left wing. Franco Fracapane at times has, you know, he's probably had 4 or 5 solid games this year, but he's also probably had about 25 or 30 where fans have been wondering why he's the star. It's all to do, as they say, on the final day.
All right, we're gonna let you enjoy those chickpeas, Jeff. But it's everything's come full circle here, and I'm glad we caught you mid lunch.
Thank you. Excellent timing.
Enjoy.
Take care,
All
Jeff.
right, let's keep it rolling here with the opponent for Minnesota United, Vancouver Whitecaps in town. They're number 15 in these power rankings. 43 points, 9th place, 3 straight wins though, and if they win in Minnesota, they are in. Vanni Sartini likes these late season pushes. Doyle, this is a little bit of Whitecaps from last year as well.
Yeah, a little bit of magic from this team late in the season. I don't know how to put this. You can see it coming if you just look at the talent on the roster. They have some really good players, right? I'm not sure anybody saw this coming in terms of how they were playing up until 3 weeks ago. It's like they've not put together a winning streak all year. They had the worst attack in the league from possession. They did not hit a lot of through balls. They did not generate a lot of transition chances. They were really gappy and poor defensively in transition. And then for whatever reason, 3 weeks ago, it changed. I think one of the biggest changes is that Pedro Vite is in the lineup, the little Brazilian U22 initiative signing. And he's playing on the 2 line of Sartini's 3-4-2-1 with Ryan Gauld. So they both play off of the center forward, whether it's Brian White, who usually starts, or Lucas Cavallini, who came in to finish this game off. And Vite, he's just, every touch he's trying to hit a through ball. Every touch he's trying to put guys in on the break, whether it's Gauld straight through the middle or whether it's Gressel up, you know, one sideline or Martins up the other. He's just trying to put guys into space, and that's where the Whitecaps have been able to do their damage. And there's this particular pattern of play. It's not a complex or unique one by any stretch, where the center forward will drop back, little bit of hold up play, try to get the ball on Vite's foot. And when that happens, everybody takes off running. And the terrifying thing about this, if you're a Minnesota United fan, is like, that's the exact goal that they gave up against San Jose to make it 2-0 this past week. And it's the exact goal that they've been giving up throughout this entire miserable run to end the season. So look, Vancouver's on the road. That they, even during this run, they have not been a particularly dominant team with the ball. I think they go into this game as underdogs because a draw is not good enough, which means they will have to come out and carry the game. Like, there's no incentive for Minnesota United to bring their lineup, especially since they have, you know, 2 center backs who can't defend in space. But like, if you look at how they've been playing and what they've been doing to teams, like, it seems to match up directly at what Minnesota's weak point is right now.
Loons fans out there with the just nervous laughter. Could all go downhill for them fast on decision day. We'll see. Vancouver Whitecaps, everything to play for. If they win, they're in. If Minnesota win, also win. And then you're right. If Minnesota draw, they're in as well. All right. Based on tiebreaker, 13 wins to the 11 wins of the Portland Timbers. Of course, RSL would have to get a result. Let's turn our attention to a team that hasn't got a lot of love recently in the Western Conference, but is fighting for a spot and a home game here. That's FC Dallas. Doyle at number 8 in these rankings did not have Paul Arriola.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait. It was RSL. Oh, Phil, I screwed you up. Phil. We're going to Dallas. We'll be back to RSL in just 1 second. No Paul Arriola. I thought that really hurt them against the Rapids, who have been very good at home still. That's the only place they've been good, really. And Diego Rubio's been good. Where does Dallas stand heading into decision day in your mind?
I think they're a good team. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they got another win this weekend. They're hosting Sporting Kansas City, who, to be fair, one of the hottest teams in the league. But they're not a dominant team. They don't have the ability to go out there and both control play and generate high level chances. And I think that's a sacrifice that Nico Estevez has been fine from day one to make that trade, because Dallas were not good last year, and a lot of people pointed to the attack, but it wasn't really the attack. It was defensively they were terrible. I think age or injuries rather caught up with the center backs for one, and for two, I think there was some pretty naive fullback play from them last year. But really, they were turning the ball over in bad spots all the time and having to face run out after run out. So the first thing that Nico Estevez decided to do with this team this year was make sure that the structure was good, so that when they did turn the ball over, because everybody turns the ball over, right? But when they did turn the ball over, it wouldn't be in spots where they could get damage. The cost of that has been some attacking dynamism. Like they don't overwhelm you going forward. Unless it's end of the game and they're throwing the kitchen sink in, and they could do some damage in that situation. But like that is way down the list of how they ever want to play in a normal game state. The thing about Areola is, even though he's not a clinical finisher, a masterful final pass kind of guy, he's really smart about always attacking that space behind the back line, even when Dallas are in possession, and even in situations where other players are static. So he gives them that ability to be dynamic in their possession that nobody else on the roster really does. So what they missed this weekend was that, they had no ability to unbalance the Rapids defense. I think if they're fit and whole going into these playoffs, they could win a game. They could even win two. But I just think that if you're going to be a MLS Cup title team, or even get to MLS Cup, you need to have a little bit more in attack. It falls on. I think it falls on Paxton Pomykal and Sebastian Lletget to be a little bit more dynamic coming out of central midfield in those free 8 roles. And it's a difference between how FC Dallas play and how LAFC play, right? Like LAFC, they will get stuff going forward out of guys like Jose Cifuentes or Latif Blessing. Dallas is not getting as much, especially in terms of just like box arriving, being another man, like to get on the end of a cross or a pullback. Dallas don't get as much out of their two guys. I think that might end up being more of a year 2 under Estevez thing. But either way, this is a good team that's played good soccer, smart soccer, really structured soccer all year long. They're probably going to get a home game in the playoffs because of it.
All right, decision day for FC Dallas, trying to secure that spot at home in Frisco, Kansas City in town. They'd have to do it at home. Let's finish off with LAFC, Phil. I saw Max Bretos is in here with us. Max, I just sent you an invite. If you want to request or jump in, we'll have that chat with you, man. They are Supporters Shield winners, and they've gotten a lot of airtime on this show, Doyle, over the course of this season for obvious reasons. What does this shield mean to them? Where does it stand in sort of the annals of league history? And is it truly just MLS Cup that's going to decide how this team is judged?
Well, I mean, we should throw it to Carlos Vela, right? Because Carlos Vela said it means nothing without the MLS Cup win. I understand that point of view. I understand why you would want to put that out into the world, because MLS Cup is something that has eluded this LAFC team, and they've won the Shield before, and they know how great that is, and they haven't tasted MLS Cup. I still come at this from the perspective of a fan and from an analyst who watches 8 months of regular season play every single year. And to me, it's the ability to achieve that level week after week after week and give your fans that kind of enjoyment when other teams are falling off for one reason or another, or just aren't able to bring that quality of play to the field every week, like that's the champion. It's a better representation. The Shield is a better representation of who is truly the best team in the league. So to me, that's the one I celebrate. But I completely understand why Carlos Vela said, nah, actually, let's focus now on MLS Cup, because it doesn't mean anything to them without the Cup.
What do you think, Max? What's the Shield mean to you, man?
I gotta say, Matt hit it on the nail. That was I was a little surprised that Carlos Vela said that. I understand it. I think there's pressure that everyone's like MLS Cup or bust, which has been kind of a slogan said here. But if the playoffs, we have seen it through the years, and not only in MLS, but Carlos Vela certainly is a fan of Liga MX. Has seen it too, where the best team doesn't always win it or always make the final. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. It's not an exact science. A weird break, a red card here, and you may not win MLS Cup. That said, there's a lot of pressure on it, but I would look back with a level head and say that LAFC accomplished so much this season. And as you said, the amount of joy they provided with regards to winning the West, qualifying for the CONCACAF Champions League, which is huge for this club. They certainly feel like they have some unfinished business and are inspired by what the Sounders did last season. And then winning a supporter shield for a trophy case, for that figurative trophy case that was empty. Now to have two shields in there is a great accomplishment. So I hope it doesn't get diminished if they fall short here, which could happen, although I think this team is better equipped depth-wise, and like 2019, they'll play everything at home as long as they get through. Maybe it's just a perspective thing. If they win a game, it wouldn't be so hard if they don't win the Cup. Certainly if they make an MLS Cup final and lose, I think you have to look at the season as a credible success. But it won't. And guys, it won't. At the end of the day, some people will be frustrated. There's been some frustration with the LAFC fans during that little bad patch, which I try to walk everyone off the ledge. I go, everyone's going to have a bad patch in this season. And sure enough, after Austin beat LAFC, they had a cataclysmic patch. And then Philadelphia had a bad patch, which allowed LAFC to get back in there. So it's going to be nerve-wracking, but I think you're 100% correct on that, Matt. There was a lot of joy.
Yeah, a lot of joy, but let's do Carlos a solid and turn our eyes toward the postseason. And for this LAFC team, that means lineup questions. And I think we know at this point that Gareth Bale's not a starter. Is Giorgio Chiellini a starter? Like, what is the top center back pairing at this point?
I think it depends on the opponent they face, but ideally, I thought they liked what Chiellini and Segura could do, and it's just a very modern combination. And obviously, Giorgio's 38 years old, but these center backs that can distribute the ball from the back, and Chiellini, I believe, has the best passing percentage, or he did a couple weeks ago when I last checked for the club. I think I didn't hear this from the team, but I was talking to Vince LaRosa. We were doing our watch along, and I go, Chiellini didn't start, probably not coming into the game against Portland because of the surface, and he didn't. But Jesus Murillo's been such a clean player. I mean, if they need a physical presence, or maybe if they're expecting to see a lot of set pieces, it wouldn't be ideal to leave Murillo out. But I think just the combination of Chiellini and Segura is so exciting, it may be hard to resist. Otherwise, that lineup is probably as you would expect. The fullback situation is has been pretty locked in after some suspension issues and an injury to Franco Escobar. But I would imagine it's going to be Palacios, Hollingshead, and then, as you said, Gareth Bale is not going to start here, because that trio has really solidified themselves with regards to, Chicho Arango hasn't scored the goals last few weeks, but he kept this team afloat with his goals.
Yeah.
And then you have Carlos Vela scoring goals from outside the area, and then Denny Buanga, who you could argue is the most important player right now for LAFC. It's an embarrassment of riches. It's a great conversation to have, and it's going to be, I think the interesting part is how you execute or how you use that bench, which I thought Steve Cherundolo did a great job with this past weekend and has done throughout the season.
Still just boggles my mind. When Bale came in to where it is now, and like, oh, he's not a starter. Like, that's just the deal ahead of a World Cup. Very, very interesting stuff for LAFC. They got to get the cup. Max, we're going to call this one good. Keep your eyes on the road, hands at 10 and 2. All right, my man?
I got to get some lunch after listening to Jeff Rueter. I've got hungry all of a sudden. It's
Yeah,
lunchtime.
same, man.
All right, lunchtime for everybody, depending on what coast you're on. Big thanks to Max Bretos and all of our guests for joining us. Big thanks to you, Doyle, and even bigger thanks to Phil Levanko, who's been our producer on this show all season long. We could not do this without Phil. So huge thanks to him. If you
He's
are
a quarter of the way to an EGOT, man. He's got that Emmy. Got to get a Grammy, Oscar, and what's the last one? Was it T?
Tony
Tony
yeah,
Award.
yeah, come
Phil on Broadway.
Wouldn't you? I thought you would be the guy.
I totally
Tony.
blanked.
I
totally
blanked on that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, big thanks to Phil. If you missed any of the show, it always goes up on the MLS Today podcast feed, as well as right here on Twitter Spaces. It's been a great year, everybody, but we're turning the page of the playoffs. Happy final power rankings. Until next year. Adios.